listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me once again, Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. You know, it's cold out here in Illinois. Woke up today, it was 17 degrees with a wind chill of 7.
Okay, you're not as cold as it is here. I was about to say it's like because we took 2 weeks again. This is the last time we're taking 2 weeks. I swear.
Yeah, we're back to the weekly schedule. I'm mentioning that off the top.
Well,
come back next Sunday, we'll be here.
Because last weekend I was in a wedding, so that explains the Saturday to Sunday gap. I didn't go to either of the home games because Saturday night was a long one for me. So you can imagine.
Fair enough.
But last Saturday afternoon for this wedding, we had weather out here that was something like high 50s, low 60s kind of stuff. It was for mid
we hit 70 on Monday. Yeah.
Right, for near like mid-November, it was gorgeous. It was like you couldn't have asked for better weather. Nobody needed any like taking pictures outside was not an issue.
And then that lake wind rolled in.
Like I went outside yesterday and it was like, and I said this too because our like you got the nice weather then on Monday because our Monday was freezing.
Okay,
like
it might have been Tuesday. I don't know.
Well, no. It just
before that, I don't know.
Well, no, because we had there were remnants of a hurricane that came through on Friday, and I think it just picked back up. Like whatever front was coming through came back through. It's not a weather podcast. I get it.
No, then that's what I'm getting to. Okay,
I know it's cold. So
speaking of natural disasters like blizzards and hurricanes and etc.
I thought you were going to say speaking of cold.
No, speaking of disasters. The Philadelphia Flyers have lost 6 straight, completely crashing down to earth, full Dennis Green. They are what we thought they were. Here we are. The tank for Connor Bedard is completely on, right? Is that fair to say?
Yes and no.
That sounds like somebody who has to cover the team for the rest of the year and wants to watch a couple of wins.
No, because no, it's not that. Listen, it doesn't matter. Like, the reason I'm saying yes and no is because you can call it the tank is on. You can call it whatever you'd like to call it. They've actually played better over this 6-game streak than they did over either of the 2 double-digit losing streaks last year.
Okay,
that
is encouraging.
The irony of this losing streak is, and. You know, I know that we have this debate, or we've had this debate before, and the way it works around hockey circles of, you know, what do you pay more attention to, the eye test or the analytics test, or do you blend them together, or whatever the case may be? The analytics actually tell you they're playing better process-wise than they have all season.
Right.
Like, truthfully.
And they are.
And I looked this up, and I'll read this off really quick. In 4 of the last 6 games, they are the team with the higher scoring chances for percentage. In 5 of the 6, they are the highest Corsi for percentage this season, or in this stretch. And 6 of the 7 highest games in high danger scoring chances for this chances for percentage this season are all during this streak. So all 6 of these games, they've had like the higher percentages of high danger scoring chances for.
Right.
Than any other games. Like, they were winning games and doing worse at getting scoring chances than they are right now. Yep. So right now, what's happening is they are A, finding ways to lose games, and B, the talent disparity is showing every night.
Yes. And
like, you can be like, all I could think about was the quote that everybody thinks of is hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, right?
Right.
Like, it's an age-old quote. People know it, right? And to an extent, that's been true because they don't have a star. They've got practically got a starting lineup on the injured list right now.
Right.
And yet they're competitive. The effort is definitely there. I can't deny the effort's there. They have not like rolled over and lost a bunch of games. Even if this that's the funny part. And not funny in a ha-ha kind of way. I like again, ironic. They've got most of their most lopsided losses on the scoreboard are coming during this stretch, when reality is they're playing better than that. Usually there's a contributing factor. They lose to, I guess where we really need to start is the beginning of where we left off, because they went into a game. We kind of were talking about this surprise start, the 6-3-2, and where they were, and they went and they beat St. Louis handily. I mean, best game they played all year.
Yeah, for sure. They are a scrappy team full of young kids trying to make their name and older, tough vets, trying to prove they still have a place in the NHL. It's a chip on their shoulder kind of team. We saw it kind of catch teams by surprise in that first dozen games or so, and now that teams have kind of figured it out, if you show up with a decent effort, you're gonna beat the Flyers.
And it's tough to this is why it's tough to evaluate, because there's a lot of people that are going, oh, okay, back to earth, and teams are figuring them out. I don't know that teams are necessarily figuring out certain aspects of it, because if they were, then these games would be worse than what they are right now.
I just mean they're figuring out that they need to show up with a little bit of effort, and that's really all it takes, because most teams just have more talent than the Flyers do.
Well, oh, absolutely, and it gets worse when you add in the injury list. I mean,
including we added Scott Lawton to that list last night. I'm sure we'll touch on
right
that at some point.
Now the issue, and this is going to be, every week we joke about the Monday news drop. Lawton will be the Monday news drop in one way, shape, or form, because he's either going to somehow play tomorrow or he's going to be out tomorrow, and we'll find out. The thing that's interesting to me is, again, this is why I can't get a read on this thing either, is because if I can go and give you all of those numbers that during the course of these 6 losses, you've got 4 of your best games in this area, 5 of your best here, all 6 are in your top 7 of high danger scoring chances for percentage, or whatever the case may be.
Right. They've been some of your better efforts so far.
But then you're doing all of this, no Sean Couturier at all, no Cam Atkinson at all. James Van Riemsdyk's been out this entire time. And I'm not trying to say that any of these guys are transforming your team magically. But do you think, perfect example, who's on the ice for this Montreal game trying to close it out in the final minute if more guys are healthy? Is Scott Lawton out there if he's still in the game? Absolutely. Is Cam Atkinson possibly out there, or Sean Couturier? Yes.
I know Nick Delorier and Zach McEwen aren't out there, and that's who was out there.
Right, and that's the point, though.
And quite frankly, Zach McEwen has been one of your better contributors over the last couple of weeks. It hasn't really turned into goals, but he's been one of your puck carriers. As weird as that is to say.
Right, but okay, so this is where I'm trying to go with this. It's no, Zach McEwen hasn't been that bad of a player this year, and everybody's
he's been solid.
And everybody's freaking out that he's on well, this is why they are what they are. They've got Zach McEwen playing power play, and the answer is, who else would you like to do it?
Well, that's the point.
Quite literally, and I haven't tweeted this, but I did post it in a comment on Facebook. They're icing, and I've texted people this. They're icing a preseason lineup right now. When you're moving these guys up and they're playing second line,
this is
that's what you see in the preseason.
You know who the Flyers are? They are a wagon in the AHL. They're full of young guys who are ready to be NHL players, and old tough guys who are borderline NHL players. They're a wagon in the AHL.
It's funny you say that while the Phantoms have a 5-game winning streak going on at the moment, too, by the way.
The roster's just full of it.
The Phantoms have been doing everything to find a way to win lately, and you're right. It's a glorified, that's why I keep saying it's a glorified preseason roster.
The entire organization is full of it.
I'm trying to figure out, right, but I'm trying to figure out, and in my head, get around the concept that they're going to play a game on home ice against Calgary on Monday night tomorrow.
Yep. And
possibly be without, in no specific order at this point, but possibly be without, and I'm just doing forwards, because defensively they've really kind of played a consistent lineup. I mean, they've used the same 6 defensemen for 2.5 weeks at least.
Right.
I don't remember, at this point, I don't remember the last time Igor Zamula played a game.
Right.
I think maybe Toronto, because they gave or Ottawa, because they made Ristolainen a healthy scratch for a game.
Okay.
Which that's a whole nother story too, because he's strapped to the third pairing. So don't you love having a $5.1 million third pairing defenseman?
Yeah. Well, that's
but beside the I'm not upset about it for what the purpose behind it seems to be, because if that's John Tortorella sending a bit of a message about a guy's level of play, we can't hate on that. That's
Right.
that's honest truth. I mean, let's put it this way: Kevin Hayes started the game in Montreal on the third line with Max Willman and Patrick Brown, I think.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
it's like,
Patrick Brown getting back into the lineup is not something I expected to see, but here we are.
Actually, to me, it is something I expected to see. It almost feels fitting, like that's the guy who comes back from injury first more than anything. Like at this point, I think, I'm not saying fans are infatuated with this guy by any stretch, but if James Van Riemsdyk were to walk through the door tomorrow, I think everybody would go nuts. Like, and he's not, but you know what I mean. Like, it's
by
like,
the way,
because it's at least a guy who can put in the top 6 and say, okay, I can see how he still fits there. Like, he's got to be better than putting, Zach McEwen up there, or, trying to see if Morgan Frost or Noah Cates can evolve more at, like, rapid fire when they haven't done anything for most of the year.
Cam York has 9 points in 13 games with the Phantoms.
And it's such a tough call because
leave him there. Leave him there.
Right. That's what I mean, because the tough call is you can be tempted to say, hey, he could help us right now up
Please,
at this
for the
level.
love of God, leave him there.
But you could also say, give him the positive vibes of essentially becoming a leader on a team that
Let
he
him
should
be
feel
a
very
stud
comfortable
for the
with.
Phantoms. Am
I wrong about that? I mean, he's played enough years down there. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's going on, I guess, parts of 2 pro seasons or 3 pro seasons down there.
Yeah,
at least.
I'm looking at his elite prospects page right now. In the 2021 season, he played 3 games with the Flyers, 8 games with the Phantoms.
Right, so that's shortened year than last year.
Last season, he played 30 with the Flyers and 34 with the Phantoms.
And so far this year, it's something like this. He didn't make it this year, so he hasn't.
He has not. Right, correct. He has not played for the Flyers yet.
So he's up to something like 12 down there, or 13.
13, 9 points in 13 games. Let him stay. Let him get 50, 60 points, whatever he ends up at. If he picks up his pace a little bit.
Sure.
Let him dominate. Let him be an absolute monster.
It's ironic that I'm calling him. Yep. Like, the guy comes into the year with 42 games of experience at the AHL level, and I'm calling, 13 more games down the line, and I'm sitting here saying let him stay and become a leader down there. Like, after 42, like, that's not even a full AHL season.
But he's been a leader at every level, so we expect no different here.
And the goal is, like, leaders are guys who get the most minutes, right?
Right, but he was a leader at Michigan. He was a leader in the U.S. program. Like, we expect no different out of Cam York in Lehigh Valley. And we expect, quite frankly, we expect no different of him when he comes here. And that is one of the things I wanted to mention, by the way, is when it comes to the injuries, is almost every player you mentioned there has worn letters at some point.
Oh, sure. And
I think, did Cam Atkinson wear a letter at any point? If not, he was gonna. Like, let's be honest, he was definitely a leader for that team.
Geez, last year feels like a blur to me. We've already you've already made that comment, but I thought he did maybe at one point in time. Let's put it this way: for sure, I know he did in Columbus. So it's like the point is he's led before.
If he hasn't, he's still a leader.
Right.
But Sean Couturier has worn an A for a very long time. I mean,
Lawton's the only one wearing it.
Right, Scott Lawton's the only one to wear a letter now, and now he's hurt. Like,
right, Ryan Ellis was wearing it before. Ryan Ellis was wearing a letter before, and
we expected him to show up and be a leader in the locker room.
I don't know if Van Riemsdyk ever did. I don't think he ever.
I don't think so, but
he's a veteran. Yes, I get your point. And in the same vein, Travis Konechny never has either in his professional, like in his NHL career.
But he did in Sarnia.
No. Well, yeah, right. He did it as a junior player, but also there was some hinting going on that, like, John Tortorella was liking what he was seeing from Konechny, not just in terms of the point production, but that he was taking on a little bit more of a leadership role. And all of a sudden,
I've seen that out of him this year.
All of a sudden, everybody changed the tune. It went from being, wait a minute, is Lawton the only guy who's, like, in the running for this, like, thing, or is Konechny kind of putting his name into the hat of future captain possibility?
Travis Konechny has been what we want Travis Konechny to be.
Which is the shame. Yeah, which is the shame of what has happened to him.
Right. Now, one of the things we've seen out of him in the past is that when the team starts losing, sometimes is when his frustration can show, shall we say. So we're hoping that as the team kind of heads down this hole, it looks like they're heading down. We're hoping that he can not do that.
Well, he was off to a good start with it because during bulk of this losing streak, at least the
He
parts
was
that he
there,
played,
and he was playing well.
He was contributing at one point in time, and obviously he didn't play in the Montreal game, so wipe out those numbers altogether from the game. But the games leading up to it, he was already because they hadn't scored against Boston yet when he left the game, so he didn't factor into the points there. But going back to, I guess, the first 4 games of the streak and the St. Louis game, he had directly factored into 6 of their last 11 goals.
Wow.
Like, the percentage was ridiculous. He was making it happen when he was on the ice, and there wasn't many others that you could say that about.
And that's the kind of production that you're comfortable paying that salary for.
Oh, sure. And I mean, you can break down this lineup and the guys that are missing and various things of this nature and kind of pinpoint where it would start to go, not even just go off the rails, but you can pinpoint where, it doesn't feel like you're getting as much from these guys or whatever the case may be. Like, they have a handful of guys that you can either look at and say they are being as productive, if not more productive than we probably anticipated. Konechny's one of them for me. I did not expect over a point per game.
I agree. He's been stellar this year.
So he's given you an awful lot. And fun discussion I've had with others is, does it feel like Kevin Hayes is a point per game player? Because he is right now. And
no.
Right, but he's giving you point per game numbers offensively. I've looked at it and I'm like, listen, this guy's he's having an awful defensive year. Trying to play top line is not really an option, which is, but then again, I kind of shake that off for a second because of the fact that Tortorella seems to feel the same way. So I don't. It'd be one thing if you just felt like you had to keep rolling it out there like that, we don't have any other choice. He's going to have to play, but he's a -8 in the last 3 games or something like that. And you can see like they lost the overtime game in Columbus because of something stupid that he did. You can't force a pass, and you can argue all you want to about who else is on there and who else contributes to it. But at the same time, he's the one with the puck, the last guy back. He's going to have to defend it going back because everybody thinks the pass is going through. And you can't try to thread the needle and force a pass at 3-on-3 and expect to get away with a 3-on-1 going the other way and not get scored on, no matter who it is. Because it wasn't even good. It's not that it wasn't good players. That's not the truth of the statement. But it wasn't Columbus's top guys. It wasn't like Johnny Gaudreau got the puck from him and then said, "Okay, I'm gonna have my way with this because it's a 3-on-1." It was Cole Sillinger was part of that rush, and Gavrikov scored the goal, and not your typical.
To be fair, that is kind of the top of the pile for Columbus.
It's close to. It's probably second line material, second, third line. But
with Voracek out, and
that team's the fact that
they're
that team
crippled.
The fact that team because everybody after the first time the Flyers played them said, okay, they've thrown their name into the ring for the draft stuff because the second you say Zach Werenski's out for the year, immediately draws up.
Well, that happened in the first Flyers game, right?
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. So when it was over, when that news came out, it was okay. They've thrown their name into the ring.
That was kind of a nail in the coffin type of situation.
Kind of, but it doesn't.
Because they were already struggling.
They were, but it doesn't really always amount to that because
when your best defenseman, and he's your best defenseman by a pretty reasonable margin with Adam Bachfest also out.
I'm not saying they're not in the sweepstakes. They're going to finish in the bottom portion of the standings, but don't assume last is what I'm saying.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
You can't just assume that now because they lost Werenski for the year that it just goes straight down the tube.
Oh no, similar to the Philadelphia Flyers, Jonas Corposalo is too good. He will steal them several wins. In the same way that Carter Hart will steal several wins for the Flyers.
And I don't think they're going to be without they're not going to be without Merzlikins for the whole year. I think that, he'll come back at some point. And
both of those guys are good enough to steal games.
And the question becomes once they can get some of these, because I think in a span of 3 or 4, 2 or 3 games, they lost 3 of their defensemen. They've already been without forwards because let's put it this way: the Flyers lost to them the first time around, and this is a team that I think that night Gaudreau was playing with Boone Jenner and Laine was still active. Laine got hurt the next game; he was out for the second one. Voracek never got to play because he's been out this whole time. The first time they played Columbus, Kent Johnson couldn't play, who's one of the bright spots of their future.
Yep.
it didn't seem to matter. And that's a team who, despite all of it, gained 3 points on them this week or the last 2 weeks. That's the crazy part. Like
that's what we love to say.
And they're still 5 points behind. That's the funny part. But
right. Yeah, we are. I think we're officially looking at the bottom of the standings, right? Like,
because
is 6 straight enough to get you to give up on the playoffs? Just out of curiosity, like I know we were already pretty skeptical going into the season.
There's a big listen. To me it is, and I'll tell you, it's not the 6 straight that's the part that's making me give up on it. It's they're 4 points behind a playoff spot right now, and that's not insurmountable for any typical team. But they went from like, let's this way. We didn't. I'm trying to remember exactly when we did the like the last show we did was 2 weeks ago, so it would have been the 6th. So it's a little further. Like this was a little earlier than this. This was about a week earlier. So they played a couple of games. I think they got a couple more wins after this point. But I took a screenshot of the NHL standings on October 29th. Because just in the event that so much changed that I wanted like to go back and be able to say, just for everybody who freaked out at the beginning of the year, to remember that the Flyers were 5-2 at that given moment after this was going into that Saturday. They lost in overtime to Carolina that night.
Okay.
But the Flyers were 5-2, the Devils were 5-3, and you had a bunch of teams that were like the Rangers were 3-2 with 8 points, and that was 7th in the division.
Man, the crazy thing is the Devils still haven't lost since that moment. That's crazy.
I know. But I took a picture of, and this was just of the division standings, because at that given moment, the Flyers were not only leading the division or tied for the division lead in points, but technically leading in points percentage because of one game.
Yep.
And so I took the picture at, on the morning of October 29th, because of the fact that it's like, oh, well, just to mention that they were actually once for one night in first place this year, because eventually this is going to be something to probably laugh about.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I can go back and look, and I don't remember if anybody else had lower than this, but I'm seeing that like Arizona had 5 points in the standings. The distance, even at that time, between top and bottom was something like, it was no more than like 6 points one way, 5 the other. Like the Flyers had 10 at that moment. Boston had 16 and still, well, no, I think they have lost a couple, like maybe one game since.
They've lost one or two, but they're still a wagon.
Well, no, they had already lost one by that point, so I think they've lost another. There you go.
I'm saying. Right.
But
Boston is still an absolute wagon.
But regardless, so I took the picture after, and so this has changed even. So I took another picture after Thursday's game for the purpose of, okay, they went from being ranked, I can only assume probably ranked like 5th. At one point in time, I did look last week, maybe right after the St. Louis game, and they were probably something like, they were mid-pack. They were like 12th in points, but they were like 6th or 7th in points percentage. Like when you added it all up and you're like, okay, take this team and bump them down because the points percentage is different. So they were something like that. Like they were legitimately high ranking. Seemed like, it was like, okay, like, listen, if they keep this up, like, and when we did the last show, we were still kind of lamenting the end of baseball season.
Yes.
And it was, and I did a radio spot the Tuesday after because it was time to come out of the woodwork kind of stuff. Like, and what did the conversation that night center around? It's how are they 6-3-2? Like, what have people missed while they were watching baseball? Kind of like how did they get to this point? Right. Like, how'd they get to this point? And basically, I said the same thing I said on the show, which is it's a lot of Carter Hart. Like, and which was ironic. Which was ironic because Carter Hart was supposed to start the game that night, sat out with an illness. So you're sitting there thinking, okay, like if Carter Hart's the big factor here, then they might lose that game to St. Louis, who's lost 7 straight coming in, and they don't actually. That's good for Felix Sandstrom for getting a win. Like
he needed it bad.
Well, he needed it, and it like I'm sorry, you're not watching any of these games at all if you're going to sit there at the end and go, well, the guy never won a game, it's all his fault. Not even close.
No, he deserved one.
Like the way they played that game was so deserving of like the fact that he could just sit back and kind of relax a little bit.
Right.
But since then, like this is the results that you're getting. Like since then, they've been stuck at like they were 7-3-2 that night, and they're now 7-7-4. and that's the way it's gone since then. And to be where they are now, like I went in and I'm gonna stop looking at the screenshot I took from Thursday because we got even more updates now than from before. So technically, they are 22nd in the league standings. Technically,
Okay.
and that is based off of they are tied in point total with 4 other teams. They are fourth out of the 5 in terms of the technical ranking, which would be that
the tiebreakers or whatever it is.
All the tiebreakers,
blah blah blah. Right. Stuff. Yeah, we don't have to break that down.
No, but the bottom line being like, okay, here's a good example. They're tied with Calgary, who they play on Monday. So if they lose the game to Calgary, then Calgary's really above them at that point.
Yeah, but Calgary and the Flyers have gone in the opposite direction. Yeah, Calgary is on their way up. The Philadelphia Flyers are not.
Sure. The teams like I'm looking at are, okay, Minnesota is tied with them in points, technically listed after them for some reason. I actually don't really know why, but because it seems like they should be higher, unless it's, you know what it's going to be? Regulation and overtime wins probably, because Minnesota's probably got a couple shootout wins in there that make their 8 not really 8.
It would be great if the NHL was a real league. And had standings that made sense. It would be fantastic.
No, they do. It's just they don't list all this stuff on the initial thing. Like they list them, and it's, you know what the problem is too. Like it's still too early. 18 games is still too early. That you've got, like I just mentioned, there's 5 teams at 18 points. There's also like between 20, 23, 22, 21, and 20 is like 10 more. It's like something ridiculous like that. Like eventually it spaces itself out. Like, can you sit there today and easily say Boston, New Jersey, Vegas are the best 3 teams in the league so far? Because then there's a 5-point gap to the next group.
I was gonna say, yes. you can say that pretty comfortably, yeah.
Right. And can you say that Anaheim's one of the worst because they're in the bottom spot by themselves, and even though there's a few teams that are only 2 or 3 points above them, it's like, okay, listen, if I was trying to pick you out and then go and find the next spot where your playoff spot would be, it's going to be a 10, 12-point gap.
It's a long way to go. Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing, too. Like, by the end of this week, we're going to go through the course of the week. They play Monday, they play Wednesday, they play Friday, and they play Saturday.
Right.
4 more games. We're going to come on and do our next show, and there's going to be 60 games left on the schedule.
Yep, we're passing,
which is a lot of time.
Right, we're passing. Well, yeah, but we're also passing the quarter mark of the season at this point, basically.
Oh, we are, and that's okay. And that to answer your initial question is why I think you can like wipe out the whole possibility, because you know what, like sure, we can keep using that Thanksgiving marker as the time as the guideline for everything.
Here it comes. Thanksgiving is this upcoming Thursday.
It is, but like okay, like here's a for instance though. If the standings, let's just say the standings and the margins are exactly the same as they are right now on Thanksgiving.
Sure.
I'm not ruling Florida out being 2 points out of a playoff spot.
That's fair.
I'm not. Like, if Detroit goes on a slide and loses 5 in a row, then Florida pops themselves right back into the playoff picture probably. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to, like the only thing that I'm going to convince I think that the Thanksgiving guideline is a less for the teams that we think are established as playoff teams that have done it for multiple years and that we expect to be there.
Right, like we know Colorado's making the playoffs.
Right. I think it's more for the surprise teams. Like not Vegas. New Jersey is going to be in the playoff picture on Thanksgiving. It's impossible for them. It's impossible for them by Thursday to give up the division lead.
How about Seattle? 23 points, third in the Pacific.
But that's
are they a playoff team? Is Seattle a playoff team?
It's more possible now than it was at the beginning of the year. I will say that. Like
Dave Hackstall is going to go on a playoff run with the Seattle Kraken, isn't he?
Do you see how they're?
Baby.
Do you see how they're winning games though? Like they had to win in overtime last night, and they're not exactly playing a team that we thought was going to be a slouch. They're playing LA.
Right.
Like LA's right above them in the standings.
LA's a solid little team.
Actually, okay, and you're saying this because this is the way the points totals is, but I'll say the technicality. Seattle's a better team than LA right now in points percentage. They're technically second in the division.
Crazy.
They have nearly the same point percentage. It's not far off. It's like 15%, 17 percentage points. I can do math really quick. 17 percentage points off of Colorado.
Wow.
Like that's how good they've started the year.
Yeah.
Like And the thing is that, and we like briefly touched on this last week because we did the whole thing about where we had been for like the last month, and I went and saw this team play. Not when they play the Flyers, I saw them play Anaheim, and
Well, you
I
saw
was
them play a crappy Orange team, so I mean, you're not terribly far off.
yeah, but they still lost that game anyway. So for on night number one, like it typically, I mean, let's put it this way, that's like sitting there saying the New Jersey Devils lost to the Flyers on opening night and then lost their next game too.
There you go.
And then have lost one game since. Like
insane. They're
right.
on a run.
They are
right
on a
now.
roll. But the thing with Seattle is like I could see it then. Like that was a team that came out and I think had like 47 shots on goal in regulation or something crazy. And I'm like, all right, this isn't last year's Seattle team.
Right. No,
this is something different. Like
they're doing.
So
it.
I'm not surprised. The only thing, the only thing that shocks me, the only thing that would shock me at this point, because I can only assume that he played last night too. Yeah, he did. So the only thing that's shocking me is that they're doing this and their goaltender, their primary goaltender, is Martin Jones.
Insane.
Like I'm not sure how this is happening.
I'm sorry. Flyers legend Martin Jones.
I know. This is what I'm getting at. Like I don't understand how this is like. The coach that everybody can't stand is doing it again with a second-year team that nobody thought was going to be in the playoff picture this soon. The goalie that they're using primarily is Martin Jones, who everybody thought his career was, shot because he was basically able to put up backup numbers.
At least the Penguins suck too.
I would say they're one of those teams that I don't.
They're gonna bounce back. I know.
They're one of those teams that I can't buy the Thanksgiving thing from.
I know.
Like they're 3 points out of a playoff spot today.
Let me have it. Just let me have it.
No,
they just recently went on what was it, a 7-game losing streak? Just let me enjoy it.
Well, they started 4-0-1 and then couldn't win a game for 2.5 weeks. So yeah, I hear you. But that's the point I'm making. That's the point I made with the Flyers was this. We can get all excited, or people can get all excited they want to about 7-3-2 and what kind of start it looks like. It's not hard to fall off a cliff. And I even said that on the air last week when they were getting ready to play St. Louis, where it's like they're playing a team like that week. They played St. Louis, who had lost 7 in a row, which they actually got to 8 in a row. They were playing Columbus, who entered that first game with a 5-game losing streak, and then they played Ottawa, who entered with a 5 it was at one point in time 5. I think it jumped to 6 or. I think 6 is what it was at, and it would have been 7 if they would have won that game. And it's like, all it takes is a handful of games in a row where this just doesn't, where you can't seem to find a way to like that. And that's the hard part with this is they're losing games by playing better, but they are finding like Saturday defined. This is how you find a way to lose.
Yep. Well, and Carter Hart has been a little bit more human. He's still been good. I'm certainly not complaining. He's still playing solid hockey. But he's been a little bit more human with some of the stuff that's getting by him.
Right. Well, and
with a team like this, they just don't have that margin of error. They just don't. They don't have the talent to make up for it.
Right. Like, okay. And here's the thing. Like, we have already admitted he played so out of this world good the first couple of weeks that
and you can't expect him to maintain that.
No, the numbers were off the charts, and it's like, okay, listen, the goals against is a little rough now because, I mean, from the last time we did a show, it shot up from 197 to 265.
Yeah, he's getting pieced up a little bit.
But that has as much to do with they can't stop a power play to save their life right now.
Correct.
Versus the goaltending. Because here's the thing that I'm still equally as impressed with. Okay, 946 save percentage, which is what it was 2 weeks ago when we did a show, is not really sustainable. Most goalies most goalies don't play 75-80% of their team's games and stop 95% of shots.
No,
it just doesn't happen.
Very few goalies are 2002 John Sebastian Jaguar. Like
sure, but if the save or if the goals against went up by nearly like it's up like 0.75 goals. It's up by like 3/4 of a goal over the course of the last whatever number of games he started. I think 5 out of the 6 in the losing streak is what he started.
Yeah.
So in the last 5 games, it's gone up like 3/4 of a goal.
Yep.
But the save percentage has only dropped about 20 points, like 20, 25 points. So a 92% save percentage is still really good in this league.
Yes. And I'm certainly not, again, I'm not taking anything away from Carter Hart. Again, we can't expect him to maintain that just ridiculous performance.
And once again, this is kind of this goes into how they're playing better process-wise, but they're not winning games. part of the reason Carter Hart's numbers have gone down the way they have is not just the number of goals going up. He is facing fewer shots.
Right.
Like he's not getting. I don't know the last time. Like I think the last time was probably some of those last couple games before we did the last show where he's faced 40 in a game. Like
well,
I think
and
the
that
only
ties
other
back
time
into what we've been talking about, the fact that they've been possessing the puck more and generating more offense and getting the puck out of their own end a little more efficiently. And,
right,
you know, they're playing better overall.
Like this is a team that gave up. We said what was it? 51 shots on goal against Florida the one night, which equated to 107 shot attempts in the game.
Yeah, and then I think it was something like 47 against the Rangers, like some ridiculous number.
He had a lot. But like you can see when they play a team like Boston, the talent disparity. You can see how Boston has way more depth than the Flyers do.
Yeah,
still only gave up 32 shots on goal, which is much more of a average.
Sure, that's a reasonable number.
Well, but again, against a team that's the best in the league so far, I'd expect them to. Like Columbus. Let's see. The first Columbus game, they outshot Columbus 34-29. That's pretty darn good total, right? When they played Ottawa at home, 38-27, they led in shots. The Flyers did. So 27, but gave up 4 goals. Well, and one of them was an empty netter, so clarity there for the Carter Hart numbers, but nonetheless. The Dallas game, outshot him 38-31. The second Columbus game, outshot him 37-33, and that included an overtime.
Okay.
So you had a little bit of extra time there. I already said what the Boston game was, and against Montreal, they got outshot, but again, you're looking at 32-29. Like, they haven't given up more than 33 shots in a game since... Well, and they obviously played so well against Seattle, St. Louis the first time. I'm sorry, my brain is all over the place with different teams. That it's been a while since I think. You have to go back to the Toronto game at the beginning of the month to find the last time they gave up more than 40 shots in a game.
So, do you remember the first 10-game losing streak last year?
Sure, of course. I mean, I
do, but I think the Flyers went 0-5-5 or something like that.
No. See, you're thinking of the wrong one.
Okay. Then last year, I'm talking about the first one. They were like, it was 0-8-2 or something like that, right? It was bad. There was a game in there, and I can't remember which one it is right now without looking it up, that broke the Flyers. I think they blew a lead, and they looked like they were going to win and snap the streak, and then they blew the lead, and it just kind of broke the team in half. I wonder if Montreal was that game. Because you're leading that game late, you give up the game-tying goal with 1.9 seconds left, and then you lose in a shootout.
I don't know if there was a game during the first 10-gamer last year that was like that.
Okay. I thought I remembered some. There was one performance. Was one of those games the 9-0 game to New York?
No. Okay. So now you're all over, like this is.
I'm all over the place.
Okay. The years are blending together for you. The 9-0 game was in.
This team has put me through some misery since this pandemic started.
The 9-0 game was in the 2021 shortened year, so that wasn't last year at all.
Okay.
No, ironically, for as bad as they looked throughout the course of that 56-game season,
never had a 10-gamer.
They never had more than 4.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, because they were miserable.
The issue was they would win a game, lose 2, win a game, lose 3, and so they strung together a lot of only 3 of their last 9 or something like that. Right. You know what I mean? So it just felt worse than what it was, and a lot of times they were winning games by coming back from ridiculous Like they have a game in the middle where you think they would have lost 5 games in a row, and they didn't. And the win was they came back against Buffalo from being down 4-2 in the third period or something like that. You know what I mean?
I remember that game. Yep.
So, no, the first one, the first losing streak. The thing I remember about the first losing streak last year was that it started with a game against Tampa Bay where they played really well. They were still holding up against teams like that.
We still thought they were going to be a good team, frankly.
Well, sure, because after that they were 8-4-2 after beating Calgary 2 nights earlier. And they were playing Tampa Bay, who obviously already was coming in with 1 Stanley Cup, or with 2 actually, with the back-to-back. They had already won 2, and they were looking like a team that was on their way to 3.
And they made it to the 3rd, right?
Right, and they were tied 2-2 late, getting ready. Overtime felt inevitable, and Tampa scored. Stamkos scored a goal from a really weird angle that you don't know how it
Yeah.
gets by Carter Hart, but it does.
Did it bank off him?
It literally slipped right through the pad. Like,
oh, right.
there was a gap between the bottom of the pad and the skate, and he said something about it either was a new set of pads, so it went right underneath of it, or something. Like, I remember him talking about it, and that was with a minute 56 left. And off of a face-off with 8 seconds left, Claude Giroux scored and tied the game.
Yep.
And they got it to overtime, and even though they lost in a shootout, because naturally they're not good at shootouts and Tampa's outstanding.
JJ mentioned it on the broadcast last night. They only scored one shootout goal last year.
Yeah.
They were 1 for 19, I think he said, in all of last year.
I know.
Okay.
But we, like, everybody came out of that game, despite the shootout loss portion of it, going, well, you were 8 seconds away from not earning any points. That's a really good point against Tampa Bay. And then it just started to progress from there.
It just crumbled.
Lost to Boston with not even close. Lost to Tampa on the road, not even close.
The wheels fell off.
Lost to Florida that went to overtime, so felt better, but still doesn't count for more than a point. Lost to Carolina, not close. Lost to New Jersey, not close. Lost to the Rangers, not close. And they weren't like 9-0 losses. They were we're talking 3-goal losses.
Right. And I remember us talking on the show about that just being a really tough stretch of games, and they got to prove themselves, and they did not.
And this carries into about this time last year.
Yep.
And
almost the exact same time. Almost the same stretch of games.
Well, okay, I this is how I'm going to bridge the gap to what you started to talk about, because I know where you were trying to go with one portion of this, so I'll get to it in a second. But as the wheels are falling off on that first 10-game streak, then you have the most lopsided of any game, which was again to Tampa. They played Tampa 3 times over the same 10-game streak.
Yeah, and it was terrible. Yeah.
Right. So, but that was the final straw. Alain Vigneault got fired the next day. So they had to play, and they had to play Colorado with Mike Yeo starting as interim.
Yeah.
With no,
it was a Tampa Colorado back-to-back, and they fired their coach in the middle.
Which, by the way, meant like everybody knew they were going to lose that game to Colorado, because just shock of the firing was enough to do that. Then they lost to New Jersey as well.
New Jersey was supposed to be your bounce-back game, and it wasn't.
Twice, because they played New Jersey twice during that streak and still couldn't win.
And New Jersey was bad last year, too.
Sure.
It wasn't this year's New Jersey team.
Right. And then all of a sudden, as coaching changes tend to do, they got it back on the rails a little bit, because they went on like a West Coast trip. They went on like the holiday trip. They won 5 of their next 6. And then something funny happened. They lost a game to San Jose on the road as part of that West Coast trip. And then lost the next 2 after that before coming home. Lost 2 more. Had like half a week off. Lost 2 more. Then had a busy week. Lost 4 more. Then lost 2 more after that. What you're possibly thinking of is 2 things, by the way.
I just want to say real quick, by the way, the 21-22 Philadelphia Flyers might be my least favorite team that has ever existed. I hate that team so much.
Oh, I know. So let me see something here for a second, because
I cannot believe they didn't blow it up after that season.
I hear you.
I can't believe, and we're going to be sitting here in 10 years saying, I can't believe they didn't blow it up after that season.
We're going to be sitting here in a year saying, I can't believe they still won't blow it up.
I know. But Kevin Hayes has 3 years left at just a hair over 7.1. So what do you,
I know.
And that's 3 years after this year.
Okay, so here you go, because I know this is what you were kind of looking for. Now I'll go back to the one that I think you really were talking about, because they still didn't lose in overtime this much during this.
Okay.
By the way, the second losing streak last year was not 10; it was 13.
Yeah.
So there's more. No, but so the number of games I'm going to mention that even went to like an overtime, like I think it was 3 out of 13, which is still not good.
Garbage.
Like that's not a good percentage. They had
and they were getting dumpstered. Like they weren't.
For the most part,
yeah.
After there's the first couple of games, I can't find a game where I'm like, okay, they lost in overtime to San Jose to start it. They were actually down late in the game and tied it, so they kind of stole a point there in a way.
Yeah, that team quit.
The next 3 games were bad.
Yep.
They played San Jose at home, had a 2-0 lead, third period, beyond 5 minutes in, so you're down to under 15 minutes ago, gave up 2 and then lost in overtime.
Was that Martin Jones?
Who started for the Flyers, you mean?
Yeah.
I think so, actually. Yeah.
I think it might have been because
but I wouldn't pin it on him because they gave up 47 shots that night.
Oh no, I know. When it's very rarely the Flyers goalie's fault over the last several years.
Like, I can respect
I will give them credit. Like,
so not that one.
Peter Mrazek and Cam Talbot weren't the best, but like for the most part, the goalies have been decent.
All right, there you go. All right, so they played. So you had a game against San Jose where they were up 2-0 in the third period, ended up losing in overtime. They played the Rangers the following week. It was a 1-1 game into the third. They actually scored the next goal, which actually I believe this was Cam York's first NHL goal.
Oh,
it had to be, yeah, because he didn't score in the 3 games otherwise from the previous year. So he scores his first NHL goal. You expect, there's the lift. Like there's under 10 minutes to go. They just took the lead on the Rangers, and they gave up the tying goal 34 seconds later, or something like that.
Heartbreaking.
And then Kreider scored with 6.5 minutes left, and that was the deciding goal in that one. They had a game at home against the Islanders where, again, they had the lead with 4 minutes into the third is when they got the lead back at 3-2, gave up the tying goal with 4:28 to go, lost in a shootout.
Yep.
Lost
to Buffalo. Nope. Gave up 6 goals to Buffalo.
Yeah, but now we're getting into the territory where they were losing games in the first period, not the third.
That's fair.
Because that's where you're trying to go with this. And okay, here you go. 1-1 game against Dallas, who was not near the level that they are this year, by the way.
Right.
Like they were borderline playoff team at this point. 1-1 game, deep into the third. Game-winning goal was scored with 3 minutes and 25 seconds left. And they added an empty netter to win 3-1. Here's a game against the Islanders where, again...
You're tied in 3-3 in the third period. Zach Parise scores with 8 minutes to go.
Yep. Well, and even down to, this is how close... They were 13 games in a row. And they're playing LA that Saturday. And the Flyers have a 2-0 lead. And then a 3-1 lead on a shorthanded goal 9 minutes into the third period. And you're thinking, all right...
How do they lose this one?
Well, no, you're thinking, all right.
That's what I was thinking.
At some point, it was going to break, and if they're scoring a shorthanded goal, this must be the one where it breaks. And LA answered right back on the power play, so it was back to 3-2, and there's still 10 minutes to go.
On the same power play, I remember it.
But in the same vein as last night, there's under a minute to go, and Anze Kopitar ties the game with like 38 seconds left, and you're thinking, here comes the overtime loss that keeps this going.
I remember at least 3 occasions over the last decade or so where the Bruins scored a goal with the goalie pulled with less than a minute left to tie the game against the Flyers. Like, against the Flyers, not even in general, literally just against the Flyers. I remember there was one on Easter 5 or 6 years ago.
Right. Okay, so I can't look at that on here.
The Flyers are, quite frankly, terrible. The last minute of close games, any sort of big impactful game, nobody thought they were beating the Senators when Claude Giroux came back to Philadelphia, right? Nobody.
I wasn't sure what to expect. I mean, I expect, like, to be honest, I expected him to have a good game. Like,
I expected him to have a hat trick and 4 assists. Let's be honest.
I'm surprised he didn't score a goal here. Like, yeah. He just did the assist route, him scoring a goal in the game in Ottawa when he actually plays them for the first time as an opponent. That should have been easy. Should have been easy money.
Yeah. By the way, beautiful video package. He was sobbing. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, I didn't get that was, look, at this point in time, I can't I've had like this kind of thought process this year more so than ever because I've missed 4 games over the course of 2 weekends for weddings this year. And it's like, you bypass stuff like this where there's going to be 60 more, or, well, at home, like 30 more of these,
right?
For the, hey, this is somebody's once in a lifetime. You do what you got to do.
Fair enough.
And that's why, like, I actually had every intention of, I was going to miss the Ottawa game, but I had full intentions of going to the Dallas game. And as we were just hanging out, like after the wedding was over, as the night got like later,
just
it was
hanging out.
well, what am I gonna sit there and say? At the after,
we're just hanging out after the wedding, and that's when I decided I shouldn't go to the game tomorrow.
Hold on, fine. At the after party, better? Is that a little bit more clear?
Yes.
As 9:30 turned into midnight, and then a little beyond midnight,
as the expected hangover started to, well, you realize the hangover's coming.
I mean, it was better than watching what they would have done the next day. I mean,
fair enough.
I sat there and I thought, boy, they must feel as good as I do today.
Well, if you go on YouTube, Sportsnet's YouTube channel, they do have the video package, and they cut to him several times. You get to see.
Well,
did you see when he got emotional?
I think so. Because here's the thing, obviously there was a lot going on that Saturday for me. But we were basically just getting ready for the wedding itself at the time that the game started. So we were in somebody's hotel room, like one of the guys' hotel's room, and we put it on. Like the game was on. I knew mid-second period it was a 1-1 game, and had seen every piece of it.
No, so he got emotional. They did the career video package, and they do the draft blunder with Bobby Clark, and they do the ha, and they roll into him debuting and his first goal and that playoff run in 2010. And he started getting a little emotional looking at the playoff run in 2010. But where it really cranked up for me is that they cut from 2010 to The Shift.
Oh, sure.
And he lost it. He still loves hitting Sidney Crosby. Come on.
I think there's a part of him that's happy that this is over in that sense, like that now the chapter really closes, because I don't think it ever does until you go back and everybody can stop talking about that. And
we all know that Claude Giroux will be back in that building for a pregame ceremony at least two more times. Right.
At least one, if not two. You're right.
Well, he's going into the Flyers Hall of Fame, and he's getting his number retired.
Argue that, but yeah.
You can't. He's the second best player in franchise history.
I do want to say, by the way, because you just brought up the fact that you brought up the timing of the ceremony within the game. Great call by the Flyers to not do the first period TV timeout. Give him his fair, don't give him 2 minutes, give him 5. In a sense, and I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but he's not the type of guy who wants more than that anyway to begin with. It was, please just do this and get it over with. And the team, to honor him the right way, did it all before. This isn't game number 1000 where we're doing a presentation and all that stuff. It was literally, here's your video. And he just had a moment where he
stand near center ice. We're going to put a spotlight on you while you cry.
Yeah, basically.
That's what they did, and it was hilarious.
Yeah, but you can't. I mean, the reason why he react that way is because of the fact that he grew up. He realistically grew up here. I know. I'm not talking about grew up, but you know what I mean.
This is where he became the person he is today. Yeah,
correct. This is where you transform from just the rookie coming into.
Are you the same person you were when you were 18?
No, exactly, and this is where not only where he becomes the player that he is, and the veteran
he is, the father he is, the husband
and
he
father,
is.
and exactly,
absolutely,
it's the whole characteristic of it. By the way, and it was a shame because I didn't see. First of all, by the way, I saw pictures of this. They don't do this for any this doesn't happen typically.
Okay,
he met the media at the podium.
Wow,
after the game. They brought him out to where Tortorella's press conference would be.
Well, because I'm sure everybody wanted it. I mean,
and his son Gavin was there too, apparently. So, which was pretty cool. So, yeah.
But yeah, if I would not be surprised if he ends up with a residency in the area, either if he retained one or after he retires. If he doesn't buy a house down the street from Danny Briere, what's even the point? Come on. Come on.
That'd be funny.
Come on.
I don't know what's going to happen beyond his playing career. I don't think he's thinking about that at the moment. Well, he's got 2 years left on the contract beyond this year anyway. He just signed a 3-year deal. So the playing career is not ending.
And he's a huge piece for a team that's looking to gear up and make a run.
There is.
They're trying to.
I'm not trying to bury the guy here, but there's a level of irony to the fact that he goes and joins a team that everybody thinks he's not even the centerpiece of their offseason. in the grand scheme of things.
Not really. No, DeBrincat's a bigger
Like,
piece for the franchise.
in fairness, as much as I knew it was a possibility that that's where he would sign, regardless, it when they traded for DeBrincat, that was when to me I went, well, that's where he's going, because now look at the team they've got.
Now they have a piece, right?
Like,
well, and I think if
they've got defensemen, they've got forwards. He just slots into place. This is a team.
And quite frankly, he signed there before the Josh Norris injury.
Fair. I mean, if
that's massive, and that's a massive injury for them.
It is, but it's one guy they're missing. Instead, like, it's not like they're missing 12 guys, or whatever. And,
but when you're fragile and on the way up, missing maybe your biggest offensive piece in terms of just being a center, it might be enough to cripple your chances.
Well, and look, the challenge also for a team like Ottawa is you still have to acknowledge how many years of experience some of these other guys have. You have to acknowledge the number of years of experience that even a Brady Tkachuk has, even though it feels like he's been around for a while because he's the captain of the freaking team for crying out loud.
4 or 5 years, right?
But it's still not a lot. Like,
no.
Especially as a leader. Like, and even if he's one of the best leaders,
Well,
his last
name is Tkachuk. He's been a leader since day one. Let's be honest.
Right, but even so, it's still the NHL, and you're still learning. Like, I think that the learning curve is even bigger for guys like Stützle, who is even who comes in after that. We're trying to fit some of these other guys in who are younger than that. Like,
man, they have some talented players.
Like listen, I think Jake Sanderson's going to be a great defenseman, but it's still rookie year.
I think there's a reason Claude Giroux didn't sign a 1-year contract. I think he knows,
give it time.
Yes, because they are marinating and they are going to be very, very good.
I don't disagree with this.
Right. So I think the idea is he comes in year one, and if they're a decent team, then he's still, contributing at a high level. Years 2 and 3, he kind of starts moving towards that elder statesman role. Like, if the production does drop off, which we haven't really seen from him, but if the production does start to drop off, theoretically the team's good enough around him that he can kind of fill that Patrick Marleau role with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
The production has not only not dropped off, but he's tied for their team leading goals with 8, which since when? Like, all of a sudden Claude Giroux, goal scorer, has showed up. I mean, when was the last time he had, I go look at his overall numbers. Last season total between both stops, so I'm counting the Florida games as much as I am the Philly games, 21 goals. Wow. Year before that 16 in 54, which is pretty good actually.
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about a pace in an 82 game season that's starting to teeter on, it's not quite 30, but it's at least 25.
Yeah.
21 and 22. So you're going back to the year that he set a career high at 34 when he had 102 points. His point not point percentage, his points pace is close to what we're used to. About 82. Like, he's got 18 in 17 games. It's about 82.
Reliable. Yeah.
But the goal total, I mean, they're not even a quarter of the way through the season yet, and he's got 8. He's on pace for 30.
I know.
So, but I look at like, here's an example, and it's kind of picked up a little bit of late, but Alex DeBrincat's not going to be on 5 forever. No. Eventually that's going to, like, at one point in time I looked, and every time I did the previews, I was stunned because I think up until he played the Flyers. Yeah. Okay. So up until the game that they just won against the Flyers, he had 2 goals coming into that game.
Wow.
In 14 games is what I want to say it was, or 13 games. It's like,
that's not going to stay that way.
That's not his typical sustained production either. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're missing Shabbat right now. All of a sudden,
yep.
I didn't see that injury come through, but
he got hurt against the Flyers.
Oh, did he actually? I didn't see. I didn't catch. You know what? Because it was probably later in the game, and it was
in the first Flyers game, the one in Ottawa.
Oh, it was. He scored in the second one.
Maybe it wasn't.
He played.
It might have been after that.
He scored the first goal of the second one. That's why I wasn't sure, because I'm like, well, he played because I know he scored a goal.
Right.
So if he left, it must have been like third period or something, because by that point, he was like, I wasn't paying near as close attention by the third period. I was 20 minutes out from entering a wedding ceremony.
Fair enough.
So he left. I didn't catch that at that point, but I heard it the other day that he was out of the lineup. I'm like,
he got injured against the Flyers.
Okay, but that creates a damper on your lineup too, because now you're leaning on guys who are not Thomas Shabbat. Let's be real.
And I'll be honest, the hit from Travis Konechny on that injured Shabbat. If I was an Ottawa fan, I'd be upset about it.
Sure,
it was a little
that.
It was a little in the numbers. It was a little, and it takes out one of your best defensemen. So, we are really trying to avoid talking about the Flyers, aren't we?
Yeah. Did he take a penalty on that? I guess not, right?
I don't believe he did. No, or he might have gotten 2.
No, he didn't, because unless this is, and again, this can't be, because I assume I assume Shabbat left the game immediately from that hit.
Yeah.
So Konechny fought in that game, which never happens, by the way.
I believe it was. I believe that was a response.
No, it wasn't, because it happened before Shabbat scored a goal.
That? Oh,
yeah.
I guess not. Then.
So Konechny wasn't even on the ice when Shabbat scored the goal.
He just had a feisty game.
Yeah, I guess so. All right, so something I wanted to bring up, because you were trying to hint at this earlier. It's the year you're thinking of is the 2017-18 season.
Oh, Jesus!
That they had a 10-game losing streak, but here is
5-5 under Dave Haxtell.
It was 0-5-5, and here's the thing about this. Okay, so the losing streak starts with a 1-0 loss to Minnesota. The only goal was scored a minute into the third period. The second game was also against Minnesota. This time they went on the road. They lost 3-0, but caveat, 3-0 in a game where the first goal was scored 12 seconds into the game, and it was the only goal until Minnesota scored 2 goals into an empty net in the last minute and a half of third period. So basically another
sucked.
Right. So basically another 1-0 game, right?
Imagine paying for tickets to go see that game. Like, you're happy because Minnesota wins, but holy.
Sure. This is the first example of what you're talking about. Game number 3 of that streak was against Winnipeg. They had a 2-0 lead in the first period, gave up a goal in the second, and then Mark Scheifele scored with 49 seconds left to tie the game in the third.
Yep.
It's in a shootout.
Yep.
They played, here, we'll keep going. They played Calgary at home the next game, had a 3-1 lead after the first period. The game was tied up midway through the second. Got another goal to take a 4-3 lead. Game was tied up almost immediately after on a power play. They lost in overtime.
Yep.
Game against Vancouver, they just lost badly, like 2-1 Vancouver after the first period, 4-1 Vancouver after the second. It was like, that was bad.
Yeah.
Game against the Islanders. 1-1 after the first period, 3-3 after the second, nothing in the third, goes to overtime, they lose in overtime. Like, constant overtime, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, I distinctly remember that this is what time of year it was. That game against the Islanders that they lost in overtime the first go-round was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Yep.
So guess what time period we're in again? So the Black Friday game, also against the Islanders, they gave up the only goal in the first period. Second period, they took a 4-2 lead through 2. Third period, gave up the 2 goals that tied the game up, lost in overtime.
I went to that game. Heartbreaking.
That's not the game that we met up for upstairs.
No,
it's not. That was a Detroit game.
That was the following year. Yeah.
Yep.
No, that was 1920.
You're right. That was the good year.
Yeah, that was 1920.
Okay. Now we're on to, I guess, the Sunday after Black Friday. Pittsburgh. 1-0 Pittsburgh after the first. 3-1 Flyers after the second. Pittsburgh tied it up within 2 minutes of the third period. The Flyers took the lead again with 3 minutes and 41 seconds left in regulation. They gave up the tying goal with 1:04 left and lost in overtime.
Fire everybody.
The loss to San Jose was kind of boring. There's nothing to that. And then they lost 3-0 to Boston. That was game number 10.
This team has always sucked and will always suck.
This is what you're in for. And like, here's the thing. Like, there was a part of me watching Saturday's game, watching the game against Montreal, that goes, go figure, they're gonna squeeze their way out of this and the streak ends at 5. As all those chances are, like, Montreal had something like 6 shot attempts in the final minute because they just kept firing haymakers.
Right, they're pouring it on.
they're just fire and stuff. And to be honest, you had something that sails wide and rolls up along the boards. They keep it in, but like whatever, like everything's missing. They're just firing away as hard as they possibly can, and they're missing net, or Hart's able to get over or whatever. And you're thinking, all right, you know what? As we're getting down to the final, like whatever, they're gonna have to do something quick. Like there's 10 seconds left. They might not be able to pull this one out despite their best effort here, right? Like meaning Montreal, by the way,
right?
As it's going on, though, I'm sitting there going, go figure they possibly hang on and win this game. Because the day before I wrote about how they're halfway to a 10-gamer.
Yep.
And we're all talking about it because we're all thinking about last year.
And then Zach McEwen's stick breaks.
I didn't even think it then because I'm sitting here going, okay, despite that, there's 10 seconds left and they haven't scored yet.
I was pretty nervous at that point.
The stick was broken for a good 40 seconds before that.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, it is what it is. Like, yeah, like you're thinking that, like, and now, like I can't, like, I did this with you before. Like I've said this statement before, so I'm gonna say it again on this one because, and this is not anything like hot take or anything like that. This is not anything earth shattering. This is just straight up looking ahead because I've done this before. Help me find the win that breaks the streak in the next 2 weeks.
No idea.
Well, no, because I'll read you the opponents because help me find the win.
It sucks.
Yeah. Calgary, Washington, Pittsburgh, Islanders twice, Tampa, New Jersey, Colorado, Washington, Vegas. Where's the win?
You're hoping to find a win against Pittsburgh or one of the Islanders games. Those are your best shots.
I would throw in possibly one of the two Washington games only because, first of all, I think seeing a team a second time would make a difference. Like,
and you are playing the Islanders twice. Like I'm looking at that Tuesday, the game on the 29th against the Islanders. That's a pretty winnable game.
Here's what I'm thinking. I think Calgary, even though they're trending upward, Calgary could be a winnable game because Calgary's not lighting the world on fire right now.
I think they're getting there, though. And the Flyers,
I think they are too.
The Flyers are the perfect team to spark off of because that's what Toronto did. I mean, Toronto's been on a tear.
Okay, do you know why I'm the other reason I'm asking this question? The other reason why I'm kind of sitting here doing this help me find the win kind of thing.
Yeah,
is because I'm looking at each one of these teams that they're going to play coming up, and first of all, I can name a star player for each team.
Yep.
In some capacity, but also the other part of it is I'm going
the Islanders.
Yeah, but I still think Barzal.
That's fair.
And for what it's worth, by the way, up until Saturday night, Barzal did not have a goal. And I fully was anticipating it getting to the following Saturday so that he could
light
come
the
in.
Flyers up for like 4.
So that he could come into that game with whatever number of games played, I guess 20 or 21 on the season, like everybody else, right? And in 21 games have something like 22 assists, but no goals, because he had no goals and 18 assists.
Right.
It was ridiculous.
Insane.
And I'm sitting there thinking, just so that night I could look like a total genius, even though everybody else on the planet would be thinking
betting him to goal score.
No, and make him my player to watch because I did it with what was it? There was a game that I did recently, and I'm trying to remember which one specifically it was. Although I've had a few really good ones lately because I've joked. I'm like because I've joked lately. I go sometimes I'm really smart, like in a sense, like. And what I mean by that is okay. So I know that for the Toronto game, I picked John Tavares as the player to watch, and he had a hat trick that night.
Looks good, yeah.
I did it for both Ottawa games. I picked Giroux, and actually both games I looked pretty good because Giroux scored a goal 2:44 into the first one and had 2 assists in the second one.
I'm not giving you credit for that one. Everyone knew he was having good games. Come on.
Okay, fair enough. The Columbus games I picked Gaudreau both times. I didn't want to pick Gaudreau the second time. I usually do like to change it up, but by the time they played them the second time, they had so many injuries. It was like, well, either Gaudreau's going to have another killer game, or they're going to lose. Like Columbus is going to lose.
Right.
Like it's one or the other. Like I didn't really have anybody else that I could go off of. Half of their lineup was out. The first time around, I picked Gaudreau for obvious reasons, and he rewarded my decision with 3 points in the first 20 minutes and 40 seconds. Right. Actually didn't fare near as well with a couple of the other ones. Like for Boston, I picked David Pastrnak. And Pastrnak had an assist, don't get me wrong, but it was like that wasn't the catalyst behind the offense in that game.
Right.
Although there was points in the early parts of that Boston game where I'm like, Pasternak's got a couple in him tonight. You can see it. Look at the way that shot looks. And I could have picked Cole Caulfield for the Montreal game. I didn't. I picked Nick Suzuki, but
Okay.
But in fairness, like, I do want to, since it's taken this long to actually bring up Cole Caulfield's name, in light of this game, I do want to sit there and say I am really sick of reading about how Cole Caulfield was passed over by the Flyers like 20 times or whatever the case may be.
It's the same thing as Alex DeBrincat. Like everyone,
it's the same thing as DeBrincat. It's the same thing as Makar. It's the same as like get over it.
You can't play. Well, the good news is you won't have anywhere to read this nonsense anymore because, like, we don't know how long Twitter is going to exist. So
that's fair.
Flyers Twitter might not be long for this world.
No, but like, okay, like, and here's the thing: did I feed into this a little bit? Sure, like, but there's a difference in the reason why I fed into it. It was no secret that DeBrincat was on the move last offseason, and it was no secret that Gaudreau was the top free agent. So they're just there. You don't even have to, like, this isn't about passing over a guy in the draft and there and then somebody else taking from you.
Right. Like once they're an established player, go get them.
Well, not only that, but they were available and supposedly, like I don't know about the I can't speak for the DeBrincat situation. Like DeBrincat may have just, for all I know, he could have absolutely wanted Ottawa and nothing more. I don't think that was the case, but like he could have. Gaudreau wanted to be here.
For better or worse, if Ed Snyder was alive, they would have signed Johnny Gaudreau, and they probably would have pursued DeBrincat.
I don't know about that because I think they would have had all their eyes on Gaudreau, and then if it came down to signing DeBrincat, like, you know where you're right. You're right in the sense that at that point in time, it wouldn't have been a big deal about the contract extension thing. Right. That's fair. Like if you could afford DeBrincat on the current contract, which of course you could,
right,
and then sat there and said, "Oh yeah, by the way, this isn't about next year. We're not even thinking about next year. It's just this year." Then sure, you go out and you get Gaudreau on top of it. Sure, why not? But it was just funny to me how in the course of a couple of games, Gaudreau and DeBrincat were the two guys doing the most damage to you, and they were both guys you passed over in the offseason.
Yep.
That could have helped you.
Yep.
And now Caulfield's the one who lights you up in this game. It's the friendly reminder that you passed over him twice in the same draft, and I get it. Like,
but everybody passed on him. Like,
and it's not just that for me. Like, the thing that bugs the crap out of me when it comes to this stuff is you don't know that he plays this way here. You just don't know. Like,
nope.
I understand it looks awful that he scores 2 goals against you. It looks like he's rubbing it in your face, and he's done this to you since he's gotten there and all that stuff. Yes, I understand, and I understand the idea of why wouldn't you want a guy who had 101 goals over the course of a season? Why wouldn't you want that? I understand how it looks, but you have no way of guaranteeing that he would be any better than Nolan Patrick or Morgan Frost or Cam York or anybody else that they've drafted in the last 10 years.
And who's the player they picked over him?
Cam York.
Okay. Like, Cam York, we talked about him a little bit earlier in the show, is going to be an excellent hockey player. We expect him to kind of dominate the AHL level this year. If he comes out to be 90% as good as Cole Caulfield is, relatively, but it's as a defenseman, I would argue that that's more valuable to the team.
It can be. I think the argument there though is that, and this is going to kind of tie into what happens if the Flyers finish at the bottom of the standings, or the purpose of why they should. You need, at this point in time, I don't know, like, they don't have a single player, and I already mentioned it's kind of like they're icing a preseason lineup right now with the way the injuries are. But they don't have a single player, and I would argue this with or without the injuries. Maybe Travis Konechny is that guy right now, but I need to see this sustained over the whole season too. And we have no clue what his injury status is because all we got was he was out on Saturday and they sent him back to Philly for evaluation. That's great.
We have no idea what's going on.
I need a little more than that, hopefully soon. But they don't have a single player who has take over the game ability.
No,
by himself. They don't have that guy. And Caulfield could. That's all I'm saying.
I agree. I think I want to say Joel Farabee has it in him.
But Farabee's, as far as I'm concerned, Farabee's technically hurt too because he's coming back from this surgery, and this is possibly going to take all year.
To be fair, though, Eichel has looked incredible.
Right, but it took him a year.
Yep,
So,
sure
so
did.
talk to me next year about Joel Farabee. But right now, in this moment, they don't have a player they can put on the ice that will take over a game.
I agree.
And Columbus does. Ottawa does. Dallas even does. Like, Dallas has a great team of depth. I think Dallas is the reason Dallas is in the top 5 in the standings is not because of one player. Maybe the goalie,
but Jason Robertson is
Robertson
pretty good.
can do it. Right. But he could do it.
Even looking ahead, Calgary has players like that. Washington has players like that. Pittsburgh, the Islanders, Tampa Bay, New Jersey, Colorado, Washington, Vegas. Stop me. Arizona on the 11th is the next time the Flyers play a team that doesn't have a superstar.
And I would love to see where Arizona is by that time, especially if this prolongs itself, because Arizona's not that far back in the standings.
By the way, that's the game in Arizona.
Right, the one in front of 5,000.
That's going to be fun.
It's going to be interesting. I kind of don't hate that it's a Sunday night, but not for Arizona, not super late. Like, it's an Arizona afternoon game.
Yeah, it's going to be hot, even in December.
Oh, sure. But to your point, you just nailed exactly why I'm sitting here that's why I'm asking. Help me find the loss.
Yep.
Yeah, or help me find the win, because I can look at Calgary and find, if you give, and I'm strictly even going off of, give Calgary enough power play opportunities. Don't you think they're going to score at some point?
Yep.
I mean,
Washington.
we're only talking about Jonathan Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri and guys like that, right?
Right. Washington. How many goals does Ovi score? Does he catch Gordy tomorrow? Does he catch Gordy at that game on Wednesday?
You know what? I actually, I'll be honest with you. I haven't really been.
I think he's 20 or 30 shy. That's the joke.
Well, right, but no, I want to look, because I think it's closer than that. It is closer. He's about 12 off.
Okay.
No, but all right, he's about 12 off. How many games
that game in
now
2 weeks?
And the second? Yep.
I think we circled that game when the schedule came out. I think we looked at these 2 games against Washington.
If he's 12 goals away from tying, 13 from passing.
Right. He would have to cool down a little bit.
Well, they also don't play again until Philly.
Oh, okay.
So they have nothing for the first little bit. So Philly's literally the next game. But then again, he could score 2 or 3 against Philly at home
easily. He loves scoring against the Flyers,
which would push him to 10. Let's say 10. Right.
He loves scoring against everybody. Let's be honest.
And then they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in between. If he were to score a goal per game and come into the game in Philly 2 shy or 3 shy, is it possible?
I'd be betting on it.
He'd have to get
I'd throw $1 on it.
Okay, so hold on. Then there's a couple things in play right now involving Ovechkin. Then there's a couple things in play. One would be, obviously, yes, tying or passing Gordie Howe could, but it's a little bit more. I mean, he'd really have to get on a roll, but
he'd have to hustle. Yeah.
How about forget that? What if he comes in on $7.99?
Well,
that second game.
Then I am talking absolutely putting $1 or $5 on Ovechkin anytime goal scorer. I'll tell you that much.
I'll tell you what. One of the things I've done over the last couple of years in particular is I look forward to some of the players I get to see from the opposition, to see them in person. Or, you know what? You never know if you're going to see something like that. If that possibility happens, I would love to say I was in the building for the 3rd player in NHL history to get to 800.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, it'd be something.
It's wild, just what we're seeing with Alex Ovechkin.
Sure.
And
now to further the other conversation, do you think that Pittsburgh with Crosby and Gensel and Malkin are gonna be able to score on a power play?
They're trying to turn their stuff around. They're still trying to kind of get the ship righted and get back on the right track for the season.
But they have, because I think
they
didn't lose. They didn't lose during that losing streak. I think weren't all of those games regulation?
I believe so, yeah. But
so they went 4-0-1 to start the year, and then lost 7 in a row in regulation.
I think 1 was overtime.
You're right. 1 was.
Okay.
All right. Fair enough. But doesn't matter. So 6 games. So they were
6-1.
Yeah. So they came out after 4-0-1. They came out of the next stretch 6-1.
Yeah.
And now have it. And now have it. And now have it back to 8-7-3.
Yeah, no, they're definitely turning it around for sure.
They're turning the corner.
That's what I'm saying, is that they're going to come in and they're going to look at a rivalry game and they're starting to kind of click, and Yeah, no, that's going to be
right.
ugly.
And the thing is, like, as much as like the Islanders have teetered between where they are in the standings right now, which is technically 11th with an 11-8 record, but they're only a couple of points away from being a top 5 team in the league. Like,
Yep.
I looked the other day and they were like 4th in the league standings, and it's like, oh wow, okay, I didn't think, yeah, like, I thought the Islanders would have a better start, obviously, because you get a little bit of a comfort level. You get to play at home a lot more in the first half of your season
than you did last year, right?
Right, but I didn't think they would be
new coach, new system.
How many? Okay, seriously, for a second, how many teams in the top portion of the standings have new coaches? It's a lot.
A lot. There was a lot of shuffling.
Boston, Vegas, and Dallas all have new coaches and are pulling this off. And if the Islanders are up in that ranking too, then the Islanders do as well. Yep. That's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of coaching turnover that has somehow amounted to, what you would expect it to be, or not what you expect it to be, but to early success.
Yep.
And I mean, and there's other teams too you can do the same thing with, where if like I can look at some of the teams in the middle of the pack too and go, they're also in line for that. You know what I mean? Like that with a new coach where they're in line for this could get really good. Like if Florida gets on a roll, then it's happening under a new coach. I would still qualify if Montreal gets on a big roll somewhere down the road. That's still new to me. I mean, I know he's technically in his first year officially as a head coach.
Yeah, he's still a new coach.
Had a half a year as the interim. Right. I don't care. Like, I think, for what it's worth, since we mentioned Cole Caulfield, I think that's the guy. There's a guy who's working wonders on Caulfield.
Absolutely.
Like, same type of player.
Absolutely. He laid the blueprint for what Cole Caulfield did.
Same exact freaking type of player. And it's that could not be a more perfect match.
But, all right. You know what else is a perfect match? Us coming back next Sunday.
Next week. Yeah.
All right. We got 4 games. We got Calgary, Washington, Pittsburgh, New York. We'll be back. We'll see if the Flyers come back with a 10-game losing streak.
We'll know the answer by next Sunday.
Yes, we will. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter if that still exists at YWT Podcast. Follow at Kevin_Durso. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SportsTalkPhilly.com. Make sure to follow them at SportsTalkPHL. Again, if Twitter exists.
I love the Instagram because I think Instagram's where a lot of people are thinking they might be able to go. Like I joined the, like I not joined. I'm not saying join Instagram, by the way. Like I joined that crowd of people that on whatever night it was, Thursday night, that just started sharing. Like, by the way, here's my Instagram.
Here's where I'll be.
Well, I don't know what I'm gonna have to do if this goes away. I don't think
Twitter's going belly up.
I don't think it's fully going away. I think something is gonna have to give.
We'll see. But, all right, well, maybe we'll have answers to that by next Sunday, but we will definitely have answers about that 10-game losing streak. So, in the meantime, it was a good one. We'll see you.